earlier today you told me you want to become a master at
Yeah,
stories,
a
a
story
story
master,
master.
yeah.
And I was like, what the hell does that mean?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, break down this whole the art of stories in psychology.
Yeah.
I find it very interesting, and
Mhm.
I'm excited to see the way you look at it through your world. So
Totally.
let's do it.
Yeah. So I just feel like stories are everywhere in our lives, right? So typically when we think about it, we just consider stories as like entertainment, like the movies that we watch or the novels that we read. But I feel like there's just we're living in the perspective of stories, right? Like whenever there's something that's important that happens to you, like getting to your dream college, experiencing a really bad breakup, our tendency is to kind of narrativize it, right? Like we try to explain to us why this thing happened and how this thing happened to us, and we also socially share it with people, right? Like something bad happened, you talk to your friends, you talk to your family about it, and this is like a narrativizing process that every human being does. They just naturally do it. So, so stories like kind of structure our understanding of our surroundings and every experience that we have. So I just feel like it's a really fascinating topic to study, and I've loved like reading graphic novels and just like watching movies since I was a kid, which is why I feel like this domain really speaks to me. And that's why when I entered grad school, I realized that after 1 year of like reading all kinds of research papers on social psychology, I realized that, oh, okay, so this is something that connects to something I've always been fascinated about. So that's when I realized that, okay, I want to become a story master, like understand how humans interact with stories and how stories can be used as like tools to benefit our emotional well-being, for example. Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think when someone thinks of the word story,
Mhm.
the first thing they think of is like entertainment, as you said, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting how our brain, everything we look at through the world, everything we process, any
Mhm.
career path to go down is kind of all wrapped around stories. And in fact, I think that one of the reasons humans have become like the top of the hierarchy is because of stories. Because if you think about it in history, like I think the strength of humans is the ability to collaborate. And I guess if we look at any collaboration in the past, whether that's religion or money or countries or tribes, I feel like they all exist because it's a story we kind of all believe in.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think
honestly feel like that's why we've become like the best species ever, you know?
That's such a great point. So I feel like one reason that makes humans like different from other animals is that they have very high complex cognitive abilities, right, to communicate and to record information. And that is why I feel like stories are very representative of like human culture, because of stories we can store information in ways that can be shared effectively, and we can charge it with emotions and meaning that we learn from our lives and then pass it down to the like next generations or our kids, and exactly what you said. So I feel like that's very meaningful in terms of like human civilization.
What do you think it takes to become a story master?
That's a really good question. So still in the process of figuring out, but I guess the first step is for me to just like read about how stories is being conceptualized and how it's being studied in different fields, because I feel like stories is a really interdisciplinary domain, right? So we can apply stories to every field, right? So psychology, obviously, sociology, philosophy, they all have like emphasis on how narratives influence humans. And I mean, if you think about it, like politics, it's all about narratives, right? Like politicians, they use stories to inspire people or to manipulate collective actions. And in the world of business as well, I believe. I'm not very familiar with the world of business, but I'm sure that like narratives, forming a narratives about how a proposal, how a company is going to benefit the society, that's something very important in terms of communication as well, right? So I guess the first step is just to understand how it's being represented in different fields, and then craft my research skills to know how to study it, design studies, test out my hypothesis, and get my PhD first before anything else.
Yeah, man. When I look back at stories, I think one thing that I find so fascinating about stories is that I think if you look back at humanity,
Mm-hmm.
the most greatest things that have ever happened and the most tragic, worst things that have ever happened have kind of all come because of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's, everyone agreeing that this green piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
is worth money. I feel like that's kind of a story in a way that we all kind of believe in. Like, yeah, we're all gonna agree that this thing. Let's all believe in the story together,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows for so much collaboration and so much advancement. But at the same time, you look at these tragic things in the past, and we can't really explain how could that even be so. Whether it's slavery at a mass scale or Stalin taking over. I feel like there's narratives that are kind of pushed over periods of time that kind of change your sense of reality.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, it's not like you're sitting there morally thinking about something, but I think when everyone kind of buys into a story, you just kind of accept it as reality. You're not going to sit here and question the worth of a green piece of paper if everyone agrees it's $20, right? But I think in the same way, sometimes it's so hard to fathom how things like slavery could have even been real, but at the end of the day, it's a story you're born into and a story you believe in and a story you believe till the day you die that we all kind of agree on. So
yeah, I
think it's really had so much impact and so much power in both positive and negative ways.
Yeah. Super important for sure. So I feel like several thoughts came to my mind when you're mentioning about it, right? Historically, a lot of historical events are stories themselves that we can derive lessons from, right? Trying not to repeat history again is to understand the causality of why something happens, why slavery happened, and what's going on through people's mind, and what kind of stories were crafted during that time to persuade people to conform to this idea of slavery, right? So I feel like I read it somewhere, and it always stick to my mind that whoever controls the narratives of the time has the most power. They can control the society, because what kind of stories is being told at a time matters, right? And that's what the general public would unconsciously to just conform to whatever is being fed to them, at least for most of the people, I think. I think in psychology we call that a master narrative. So how a story is supposed to be told, how your life is supposed to be unfold, right? You should get your degree, and that's going to get your job, and you should get married. How you should structure your life, that's all a cultural script that is structuring the form of stories, and people understand that in the form of stories as well.
So if the person who controls the stories has the most power, who do you think controls the stories today in the modern world?
Definitely, let's see. I feel like a lot of scientists, they produce narratives about what kind of mechanisms and phenomena we should care about. Politicians, for sure. Because I feel like politicians, they're constantly creating stories about the society, about their opponents, and in the news, for example, we also see stories of individuals, right? Something tragic happens to someone, and how do we interpret that incident that happens, right? Somebody gets shot, and what does it mean, right? What does the person represent? What does that figure represent? And how can we turn that incident into a message that incite collective actions to facilitate change, or to see that as a warning that maybe we should behave in some ways. So that's two forces I can think about right now.
Yeah.
I feel like artists certainly have a lot of power as well, right?
What kind of artists?
Like writers, when they create novels, they tell people they're sending a message about how reality works, right? So recently I've been working on a project with a few of my lab partners about how reading romance can potentially influence our understanding of relationships. So a lot of studies have shown like media can influence how we see the world and how we act, right? So I feel like artists that produce movies, that produce novels, that writes books, they definitely exert some sort of influence on the general public. Like they direct our attention to what's important in like a relationship or another topic, and what we should behave.
That's very interesting. I want to dig deep into that as well, but
Totally.
I want to first touch on those like two forces, I guess you say, or the current storytellers of our generation, I guess. I think scientists is a very very good point to mention, because I guess I didn't think about that at first, but I think especially in certain communities, people like really believe so much in science and like whatever the latest science is. I think the gym is the first thing that comes to mind. Like it's a small scale, but people debating about like what the best exercise routine is, or the best health, or what you should be eating. I think that's a big one. Diet.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the story around that comes from scientists these days, I think. So definitely communities I've been part of in terms of like the health sphere. There's so many different narratives and stories going around about what defines what it means to be healthy. And I think at the end of the day, it's all a story, because there's science that supports this diet, and the science that supports that diet, and the science that supports this exercise type. And there's just so much conflicting evidence in that regard. But I guess whatever route you kind of go down, that's kind of what you believe, right?
Yeah.
Politicians, it's funny because like when you first started talking about that, I kind of had this feeling, I feel like I've kind of stepped away from politics, and seeing it from the outside, it just looks retarded and stupid, that these people like believe so heavily in these differing views and are just like yelling at each other all the time. So at first I'm like, I feel like most people are waking up to that and like are not as impacted by that. But at the same time, the more I think about it, I think there are so many people that are like so deep in those like narratives that when you see these people get so triggered by like these little things on both sides of the spectrum. And I think now that I think about it, I think that is the definition of being like really buying into a narrative. And I think I
totally agree.
Yeah, man. I think media has made it so much worse. I think that's kind of why we're so polarized as a nation today. Yeah. That, you know, you have these echo chambers and you see the same thing on TikTok or CNN or Fox or whatever, and you get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in the story. So I think the way stories are kind of shared today is very different too with social media, and that's what you were kind of getting into at the end there. So we can kind of.
Can you elaborate more on like why do you think the way we share stories is very different? Is it like, are you talking about like how stories are spread through social media in comparison to like decades ago, or what do you mean?
Yeah. I think the different eras, it's probably the scale at which a story could spread is probably what changes era to era. Because I guess in the past, if you go thousands of years ago, maybe even like 100,000 years ago, a story can spread from like within your tribe. True. Right? Or, you know, maybe from tribe to tribe. It's just small scale. And slowly civilization starts to start. Agriculture starts to start. Stories can have a little bit more scale now. And I think when, you know, civilizations start, you have kings, queens. They kind of control the kind of stories of, you know, a larger group of people. But I think today is like the first time in history we have a global society that's all interconnected. Yeah. With like this one, the new king that spreads the story is like your phone, right? Or this algorithm, or social media, or TV, or media. Yeah. That can control the story that almost the entire world believes in. So I think at the scale at which stories are kind of shared these days is something humanity's never seen before.
I agree. And so like I feel like people nowadays, they can receive all kinds of stories in like a very short amount of time, right? So there might be competing narratives that are constantly bombing their brain, right? Because like you said, like several thousand years ago, people might be very uniform in terms of the kind of stories that they receive and the amount as well. But nowadays people are free to just go online and they're exposed to all these diverse kind of narratives. Although like the algorithm definitely recommends like maybe a niched kind or a specific type that the users might prefer, but I still feel like people can get very confused, and they can feel panic. They can panic about like what to believe in, right? Because in terms of politics, for example, like there's competing narratives from the right and the left, right? And like you said earlier, those narratives are very inflammatory and very emotional because they're extreme, right? Because I feel like a lot of people in politics, they're very invested in a belief, to the point that it becomes very narrow-sighted and very extreme as well, which results in what you mentioned earlier, like they can be triggered very easily because any small kind of deviation from their belief, it's kind of like stepping on their toes, and they feel the need to kind of defend for it. So I totally agree. And social media is definitely something I love to talk about because that's one primary channel where stories are spread, right? So yeah, definitely one source that people receive stories.
Yeah, the topic of social media, I think that it's caused so much good and so much harm in different ways, I think. And I'm curious, like, in your kind of larger perspective, how do you think social media's impact on society's been overall? Like, do you think it's caused more good than harm than good? Or
I feel like there's two sides for every coin, right? So it's very similar to the use of AI. It's like we have this tool where we can find all kinds of information, but at the same time, it's very hard to control when we want to turn it off or when we want to step away from it and kind of just depend on other sources or our own thinking. So I guess my thought is just that we should use it as a tool rather than just using it because everyone else is using it, and I feel like I cannot cut my ties with social media. So I feel like understanding how it should be used and like set a boundary and limit is very important. Because social media everything is very short term, right? It's a lot of contents, a lot of stories are trying to elicit very intense emotions in a very short amount of time to kind of elicit this like your dopamine system response, for example, and it's kind of training the social media is kind of training us to fall in love with this like loophole of just like going back to it, looking for more short, intense kind of contents. So in the long run, it's definitely, I don't think our brain is evolved to adapt to this kind of fast-paced, highly concentrated contents. So that's my like general thought about social media. What do you think?
That makes sense. I just think it's crazy how much time we waste on it.
Yeah.
I think I've been good about it and bad about it some different times in my life, but definitely on times when it gets worse, I'm just like, how am I spending so much time with this thing and not really getting much out of it? Sometimes there's a lot I get out of it if I'm like, learning something, watching something, and it's a great way to connect with so many people. So there's definitely a lot of positive, but I just think it's so fascinating how it just pulls you and just you spend so many of your hours of your day.
And you feel like whenever there's a window in your attention, you feel like I need to pull out my phone, right? So like there were a few times when I forgot my phone, and I realized that there were many times throughout the day that I'm just like reaching for my phone in my pockets, right? And I realized that it's not there. So that's pretty alarming that we immediately notice that our phone is not there, and we panic about what should I do now? Like there's nothing I can doom scroll.
Yeah, that's how I felt like the first time I deleted TikTok. This was back my junior year of high school. So this was like 3 years ago. Definitely during COVID, that's when I started using social media a lot. So I used TikTok a lot during that time period, and it's kind of become a use. Like, I used to use hours a day just watching TikTok. I think I realized it was taking up too much of my time this summer going into my sophomore year of high school, or summer going into my junior year of high school. So I remember I deleted it, and it was so funny, like so many times throughout the day I would like open my phone and my habit, I'd swipe down and like type and then I wouldn't see TikTok come up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I deleted it.
Yeah.
But I think the funny thing is like compulsion and it wasn't like a conscious thought of me trying to find it. I'm like, oh no, it's not there. It's like it's a habit of me just doing that normally, and I'm like, oh wait, I forgot I deleted it. Which I found was so interesting because it kind of relates back to like constantly checking your phone. Like it's just like it's like a little loop in your brain of just like bored, boop boop, bored, boop boop.
Yeah, like a reflex. You're like, but like, did you realize any? Was there any like emotional impact, or do you feel like social media is sabotaging your life in any ways to the point that you feel like you want to take a break from it? Because I know some people, they do that because they realize that, okay, I'm spending too much time. I feel like I'm not connecting to people in real ways, or it's making me really upset. Like the content is making me really upset, for example, and I feel like I can't stop thinking about it when I go to bed. Like for you, do you feel like there's a point when you felt like it's affecting my mental health or affecting my behaviors?
I went really deep down a rabbit hole junior and senior year of high school where I deleted everything.
Okay.
So for about 2 years, I didn't have any of the apps.
Okay.
So I deleted Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
Yeah.
My senior year, I went even more crazy. I got my screen time down to 20 minutes a day.
Whoa, that's very low.
Yeah. I was really proud of that. Coming back to college, I re-downloaded Instagram and Snapchat because, you're meeting more people again. And since then, I've been using I don't really use Snapchat anymore, but I use Instagram. I don't really scroll anymore. Like, you never catch me on Instagram Reels or anything. So luckily, I've broken that habit, and I'm really happy about that. Because I think out of all the social medias, I think any scrolling kind of thing, I think that just consumes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's probably not good for you mentally. So I'm kind of separated myself from that. But I still use Instagram because I think there's a lot of good things in Instagram, and it's like, I think it's a really cool app. And if used well, again, as a tool, I think it can add a lot to your life.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, the world would be better if nobody had social media. I think that's true. At the same time, I think you can learn to live with it in a good way because, like, you don't want to be the one kid that doesn't have it, right? And that was that for a while, and it was a different stage of my life where I wanted to do that. But I think right now my life is objectively better with Instagram for, like, social reasons, I guess. But I think my relationship with it's better now. I don't use it too much. But I still think that... I'm a pretty, like, outgoing, extroverted person, and I think I've really built down the last few years, really. Like, I've kind of always been social, but more recently I've become more, like, open, and I love meeting people in person. It's probably, like, my favorite part of life.
I can tell. People. Like, when I see you at the gym, like, you're, like, always... I feel like you're shining whenever you're, like, talking with people and just, like, meeting new people. So, like, I feel like that's very representative of, like, who you are as a person.
In a way, it's kind of exciting because I guess to me, like, there's all these things I enjoy doing in my time, but I find it cool that, like, everyone's kind of doing their own thing, especially at a school like Michigan where everyone's kind of down their own rabbit hole. Like, it's like someone like you so deep in, like, psychology and stories, and everyone's kind of, like, so wrapped up in their world. And for me, it's cool to kind of step in the shoes of someone else and kind of see the way they look at things. That's kind of one of the reasons it's such a fun part of life for me, I guess, to meet people. But I think that with social media, I think it kind of, we all have, like, a need to interact with people. Yeah. And I think through seeing people interact with each other on things like Instagram and TikTok, I feel like it kind of, in some way, fulfills it internally where you don't as incentivized to go meet more people, but it's also not enough where it, like, fully satisfies you. And I think that if there was no social media, you'd kind of be forced to just be meeting people everywhere, every day. And I think that world would be much better. But... Then again, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm not like I don't have, like, a doomsday narrative. Like, I think the world's pretty good today as well. But I do think the world objectively would be better without social media, though. But. So I've heard that, like, I forgot where, but, like, some high schools, they're thinking about banning the use of phone in high schools themselves, right? Or just, like, some parents, they feel like they want to not let their kids use social media or phone or have their own phone until, like, they reach a certain age, right? So do you think, I mean, like, you just mentioned that you feel like objectively not having social media would benefit humanity. So do you feel like that's something that you would advocate for your kids, for example, or, like, your community to do it? Yeah. It's funny because episode 72 up there with Quinn McKenna, he went to some private school where I think they actually banned the use of phones there. Like, entirely? Yeah. And in a weird way, it worked because nobody else has it. So, and it's a private school, it's a boarding school. I might be fucking up the story a little bit, but somebody told me the story. Hopefully it was him. No but yeah, I think it could work if everyone does it. But at the same time, is it worth it? See, I think for me and my kids, I will let them have a phone and let them have social media because, I mean, I'm not as deep into psychology as you, but, like, from my own readings of, like, surface level psychology. I think
Mhm.
it's very important to fit into society.
Yeah.
I think that that doesn't mean you have to do all the normal bad habits if that's something like you're morally against.
Mhm.
But I think that it's important at least at some level to be normal
Yeah.
and fit in. And I think trying to resist change never works.
Mhm.
Like whenever there's change, everyone tries to resist it. You know, like especially when the phones first came out, this resistance. Internet first came out, resistance. Now AI is coming out. Everyone's like, hold on a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can't. Again, these are stories in this culture, and humanity's gonna keep advancing. And
Mhm.
trying to resist it never works, and eventually everyone adopts to it. So
Yeah.
I'd rather be the first to adopt to it properly than try to run away from it forever and then be like the last to really adopt to it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a smart way you could use your phone.
Mhm.
And like I've thought about this a lot because like how do you get your kids to like not become the iPad kid or
Mhm.
always like the problem with giving a kid a phone too early is that they might end up being on it all day and they might end up watching TV all day and not focusing in school. But
Mhm.
I guess my mindset more is that if they have other things to do, then they'll spend less time on the phone. Like for example, if early on they're doing in school and they're in clubs and they're playing sports, they'll have enough things to keep them busy and around
Mhm.
people that are spending their time well, where like they're less incentivized to use it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think trying to take it away from them makes them want to try to use it more. So kind of
Yeah.
like if you give it to them, but then they have enough other things to do, and our family's kind of culture is like we spend our time doing like meaningful things. I think it's
Yeah.
worth giving them everything, giving them the freedom, with a little bit of oversight. But I think I'm usually against parents who try to like limit their kids, try to be super strict or hold on to them.
Mhm.
I feel like it never
Do you
works.
feel like it just makes them more like they want to rebel and like they enjoy this act of like being sneaky and just like using their phone like under like the cover or something?
Yeah. I think it just makes you resent the authority figure instead of like following
That's
a leader,
I feel like parents should, I don't know, it would be hard to achieve, but people need to realize how it's really affecting you. Because one thing that I noticed, for example, is that I have very short attention span, right? And my work nowadays require me to be highly focused on like reading a paper or thinking about how to analyze data. And I realized that like my behavior pattern before used to be like I study for like 20-30 minutes and I use my phone, like go on social media and then go back. But then I realized that it's really hard to leave like my phone after I start, because I feel like social media, right, they're conditioning your brain to use this kind of fragmented attention, right? Because you're watching a reel and you scroll really quick, right? So you're constantly switching to new things within a few seconds or so, right? But I feel like that, at least to me, that really interferes with my work, which requires like a long attention span. So once I realized that it's interfering with what I'm passionate about, I voluntarily stopped using social media, and the value of using social media decreased because it's because a much more important thing that I care about is at stake, right? So I feel like one effective way would be to let the kids to realize that it's affecting something that you care about, right? Like your interaction with your friends or your ability to achieve things in life. I feel like that realization is gonna help much more than just setting a boundary, right, without any reason, or just lecturing them about how it might sabotage you. But it's definitely hard to achieve because it took me years to realize that it's affecting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have like a long-term goal that you want to do, that you're deeply invested in, I feel like it's hard to reach that realization as well. So yeah, I feel like it's something that we should pay attention and maybe have some research on, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean,
Mhm.
the lessons you learn from experience are always so much richer than
Yeah.
something someone's been trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Because you just can't understand it in a way.
Yeah, unless you
Um,
actually lived through it. Like, I didn't have my phone when I was a child, right? I was born in 1993, and I didn't have my own phone until when I was like 16.
Yeah, because it didn't come
Something.
out till like 05 or so.
Yeah, and
when did it
we
come
didn't
out?
have a smartphone.
When did phones come out?
Like iPhone.
Yeah,
the
2010,
first-
2011?
I
Before
forgot the
that?
exact year, but I remember I was it was during my like sophomore or junior year when the first
Of high school.
yeah, the first version. So now you know how old I am. I'm 33 this year. So, but sometimes I really miss the time when people like didn't have smartphones. Like we're just genuinely having conversations and interacting when we were having a meal, for example. But it's scary because I am able to compare my current self to my past self, right? So nowadays I panic when I don't have my phone versus 12, 13 years ago, it's just so natural for me to start a conversation or ask about other people's lives without a smartphone. So I feel like because I have that memory, it's especially alarming to me. But
yeah, you can really see it.
Yeah.
You're quite old at the time where you can actually like internalize this change.
Yeah, and that's not something that Gen Z people or like Gen Alpha people would be able to relate, right? Because they're born into a world with AI and smartphones.
Yeah, because I was born into a world with smartphones, and I was born in 06, so I've lived with it my whole life.
You've had smartphones your whole life?
Yeah, like I think my first phone in 7th grade.
Oh my god. But how do you feel when you hear people saying that, oh, back in my days, I don't have smartphones and like people interact a lot more? What do you think about?
I think I agree with them. I can picture that world. In fact, episode 100, we were having a very similar conversation. Kelly Copeland, I probably shouldn't say her name.
I'm so impressed that you can remember like what you talk about with everyone.
Yeah, it's actually funny because out of all 145 episodes, I remember who was on each episode. Like, you give me a random number, I'll remember who it was. It's kind of autistic, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like each podcast that you do is like a piece of story to you too, right? Your interaction with them and how the conversation unfolds, and that's like a meaningful piece of your story, and like all these meaningful pieces, they build into like a large narrative about how you start this project and how you grow and interact with more people because of this project. Right?
Oh, definitely. I was going to talk about that as well because I think as you said, each podcast is its own story, but the entire journey of the podcast has been a story in itself because the same themes resurface over and over again. Like some themes have been resurfacing since episode 1 to 145, and some spawn in later and kind of merge, and some themes disappear. And as I look back, I can kind of see my own evolution. I've also gotten better at telling stories a lot from doing this and understanding what a story is, because a lot of what we do on this podcast is tell stories, right? Someone's reflecting on a story from their trip to, trip to Japan, or someone's telling a story about what happened in Mojo the other day. And I think I've started to picture like how humans even like to tell stories, how they structure stories. So it's definitely been an education for me in human psychology in a way. But going back to Kelly Copeland real quick, she what were we talking about? Cell phones. Yeah, she's like an adult. She's actually my friend's mom. Okay. And she was talking about the same thing about like the world before cell phones. Like it was so much more normal to go out and about and just like meet people in public, because how else would you meet people, right? Yeah. And I feel like this narrative of back in my day has always been there since the beginning of time. Maybe more now because of the rate at which things are changing. So it's, especially when I'm older, I'll be like, the world today is probably very different than the world 100 years from now, right? But so maybe it wasn't as prevalent back in the day when 1,000 years ago by, like nothing's changed. But I think definitely these days you hear a lot of people say back in my day over and over again, because things are actually changing that frequently, and to a degree I think they're right. I think the world was different, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing, but it's like good to be aware of it and just kind of use that as knowledge about how you want to live your life and adjust your own life to kind of fit in the picture of things. But
I feel like something came to my mind just like while we were talking about this. It was about how like interacting with people, right, and making connections between like the different episodes that you made. Well, first of all, I feel like conversations when people go on first date, when we're doing a podcast, right, we're essentially exchanging stories, right? I feel like that's one phenomenon that's happening, something that I want to study in the future too, right? So like when you go on a first date with someone, you might talk about movies you watched before, and if you happen to know like have some commonality in stories that you consumed before, it's a way to start a conversation, right? You might also talk about your own life experiences, like what you said, trip to somewhere, or a fun experience you had with your friends or parents, or like an experience with your mutual friends, for example. So these are all structured in the form of stories. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that I was thinking about was this idea of meaning making through kind of connecting all the stories you've experienced in your life. So I feel like us having conversation and you are able to connect what we were talking about to your previous experiences with other people. That's essentially like a meaning making process, right? So you're drawing connections between the past, the present, and thinking about probably the future as well. That's a very fascinating process that I'm trying to study too. So how does people make meaning using stories, right? So what does a story remind you of from the past? How do you make the connections? And how does a story makes you think about future circumstance, things that hasn't happened, but it makes you think, right? It makes you ponder questions. I feel like that's the power of stories. Like it elicits your imagination and allows you to make connections with other things that are happening in your life. So that is why I feel like I really admired you doing this project, because it's meaningful to you, and it's like a meaning making process for me too.
That's great.
Yeah.
I found it interesting how you shared that when people meet for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
they share stories. And
Yeah.
it's very true, because I guess we don't really think of like meeting someone in that way. Like you kind of say, oh, we're getting to know each other, but I feel like the process of getting to know each other is like trading stories.
Yeah.
You know? Like
Totally.
hear
Yeah,
mine,
trading.
I'll give these to you, you give
Mhm.
your stories, and it kind of changes your perspective on things maybe in some small ways. But
Yeah.
I guess when you think of a person,
Mm-hmm.
you think about the stories you've had with them,
Mm-hmm.
or the stories you know about them, because I think a person is encompassed by just the stories that he or she's experienced, right? Like when you
Yeah.
your self-identity is probably just like the stories you've been through in the last 33 or 19 years or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, they're so integral, and I guess they're so under the surface that I guess we don't put a label on it, but
Mhm.
really everything we do is a story.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating.
Yeah. So it's like we experience something, and then we have like maybe fragmented memories about it, and then but like we add in our own voice or like our own interpretation of the events, and it becomes a story. And as we think more and more about it, or as we share with someone, it becomes solidified into like a more rigid, not rigid, but it's like a more structured story, right? It's more coherent. Like you're more sure about, this is what I feel, this is what happened, and this is what this event means to me. So fascinating process. I was gonna say something, but I forgot.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about the project you started working on, because it's something you're studying. Tell me
Mhm.
more about that.
So, I'm curious about how people can use stories as tools, right, to make meaning, to make themselves feel better, right? So, there are some studies that show that recalling your past episodes of overcoming a challenge, it can make you feel less distressed and more optimistic about current negative things that you're feeling right now. So I'm trying to test whether that works and how this the underlying mechanism of this phenomenon, right? So I feel like people, they have memories about stories that they consumed when they're little, when they were in their key stages of development, like high school, university. But I don't think people are aware that these stories are potential tools that you can leverage on. Like I mentioned earlier, people usually think it's just entertainment, right? So I watch it and I can talk about it with people, but that's mostly it, right? But the thing is, we often fail to recognize that stories are simulations of real life. So they are things that you can take away from that can guide your behavior, guide your mindset. So I don't think everyone kind of try to deliberately dig the meaning behind stories. So ultimately, I kind of want to know how to design story-based interventions. So maybe we can ask Bill to think about memorable stories and try to make meaning out of it, see how it is compatible with real life challenges, and train that as a skill. You know, that definitely requires a lot of like cognitive capacity. So, for example, teenagers, it would be really hard for them to do, right? So, it would be easier for people whose like cognitive ability has been developed more, like people in their early 20s, for example. But yeah, that's my ultimate goals. But currently, I'm just doing projects on using stories to regulate their emotions and cope with challenges in life.
So this is more in a therapeutical setting it's used, or?
I wouldn't consider this therapeutic, not yet, because that's more like the clinical psychology realm. But my specialty is more social psychology. So we look at emotions, we look at interpersonal relationships, happiness and well-being, but it takes more work to translate all those work into clinical settings. So I would separate those two domains for now. So I'm not touching on anything clinical, although I am working with someone who's in the clinical field. He's a grad student as well, and we're collaborating on projects as well. But the nature of the work is not clinical.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of the work you're doing is on the research side now, trying to understand the impact, I guess, of past stories and how they can affect their emotions and optimism today. So you're not crossing the line into like the actual using this research to directly work with a client or a person to help them, or you're just sitting on like the backside of like the research?
So now we're just figuring out the mechanism, right? So we don't even know. Maybe I should read more about it because, but I'm not sure. Like we don't know much about whether it works or not, right?
Okay.
So we know that people might do it, but we don't know how effective it is, and in comparison to other strategies, right? So my work right now is trying to figure out how it works and maybe for whom it works better. For example, like for a person who doesn't really watch movie or doesn't really read novels, it would be really awkward to ask them to be like, hey, now use the movie to rethink about your problem in life, right? So it doesn't come to them intuitively, and even after extensive training, it might still be difficult for them. So it might be useful to think about like what type of story is more useful for what kind of people, right? So maybe you have a lot of interesting stories in your life that you can leverage on. So that's more effective to you than asking you to use a movie or use a novel to rethink about the problem, right?
That's interesting, because whenever I do like consume some kind of story, I almost always try to relate it back to my life.
Interesting.
Like, I don't know if you read The Count of Monte Cristo.
No, tell me about it.
It's a classic book from the 1800s.
Okay.
Set in like Marseille, France, and as I'm reading it, I'm like drawing so many parallels to my life.
Okay.
In weird ways, but it's honestly helped me to rethink life in a more positive way.
What is this story about? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I've only read about 300 pages. It's 1,000 pages long.
There's 1,000 pages?
Yeah, I only read it over breaks because over here I'm just so locked in doing so much stuff. But I started reading it in October for a week when I was like out of the country. Then stopped, and over Thanksgiving read it for another week. Then over winter break got through a lot of it, and I haven't read it since winter break. But hopefully over spring break I can kick through like another 100, 200 pages, and slowly maybe this year we'll get it done this time. But yeah, this story, basically there is this person whose name, I forgot all the details. I think his name is Dante.
No worries about the details. I'm just curious about
overall
like
the
the general
structure.
plot.
Yeah,
like, what
yeah.
is it?
So there is this very successful sailor who's about to be promoted. He's very young. He's about to be promoted. A lot of people are jealous about him. So a lot of people sabotage him, and he gets wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he did not commit, and he gets sentenced to like one of the worst prisons on his island, and then he escapes prison, and then he's trying to get revenge on the people who did him wrong now. And the parallel I draw is more like a larger theme of adventure. Whenever I read these kind of things, I try to think like, my life needs more adventure. And that's kind of always what I come back to, is that I kind of think of my life as a long adventure. And I think the best way to make your life an adventure is to just say yes to things that come your way, because they take you down these different routes. Like when an idea comes to my mind, how can I, as quickly as possible, make it happen?
Yeah.
Which could be as simple as like a trip, or it could be like one summer getting the idea to like start a podcast, and that kind of starts its own adventure, or getting this idea for a startup to work on and just saying yes immediately, no time wasted, just go all in that. And I feel like I'm very good at saying yes to things, and I end up saying yes to too many things, and then a lot of them fall off. So I may start like 1,000 things, then I drop like 950 of them. But I think the few 50 that stick, they become these amazing adventures. So I think the things that are meant to stick. And I know it's a crazy pull from the Count of Monte Cristo, but every time I read these books and I see them going on adventures, I try to think of like the adventure of my own life through like the podcast, through like my startups and the things I do and the people I meet, you know, even like real adventures, like going on road trips and traveling. Like I think that's my core value. Like I want to do everything I can with adventure. Yeah. And I hate boredom, and I hate sitting around not working towards something. So working toward could be like learning to swim, you know? You can learn to surf, you can learn to play the guitar, it could be learning human psychology through doing this. So I think reading those books opens my eyes to adventure and how I can incorporate that into my life. So
I think that's amazing that you are able to find that parallel, because I don't think it is a skill. I think it's a talent too. Not everybody has that sensitivity towards seeing the meaning behind the story and finding the connections between their own the story and their lives, right? And it sounds like you're saying that the story is like a motivational factor for you, right? You're saying that because of seeing the protagonist having this adventure, you feel like that kind of you're using that as kind of like a motivator to change your behavior. So perhaps at times when you are feeling a little bit lazy, or you realize that you're not really going out there, you might recall that, well, this person is doing that, that's who I want to be, so I'm going to change my behavior and direct my mindset and so on. So you would be a perfect like participant for my study, actually. But you know too much, you wouldn't be participate. But you are the kind of person that I feel like would benefit my, like, I want to study this kind of person, you know, who can make this kind of connections. Interestingly, I conducted this very quick study last semester, and we asked people, right, like, okay, tell me like a story or two, like, tell me a time when a story helped you in the past to face kinds of challenges, or helped you in any ways, right? And very interestingly, quite a lot of people report that they use that to kind of direct their behavior and motivate them. That's right? Cool. Like saying that, okay, so I learned a lesson from this story, or this character is very inspiring. So it makes me think about like going out and interact with more people. It motivates me to interact with more people, or to make a decision for me, not for other people, and so on. So this is definitely happening to some people. I just need to find out like how this is working, you know, and whether this impact your psychological well-being and your capability in like different skills.
I think it definitely does. You know, I don't know if you're allowed to study me, but if you ever, as you're going about this process, if you have like questions come in your mind, you know, we can always talk over the phone about.
Yeah, I love to discuss it. Like, I can do a case study on you or something.
Because as you're speaking, I just think back to other stories I've heard and like how they've kind of impacted the way I've looked at things. Because I don't watch too many movies, and I've nothing against movies, but like I guess if I have free time, there's like other things I end up spending my time doing.
That's totally fair. Like, people consume stories in different ways.
I wish I had more time. To just watch.
I'm the kind of person that enjoy like visual stories. Like,
I love movies, but I just never have the time. I feel that, but I think two other stories I can think back that have kind of impacted my own like life and psychology, I'd say, is reading The Beauty and the Beast, like the fairy tale, like the short version, the original one. And the thing I took away from that was like Beauty's honesty, how she'd like never lie. And it's also a story I remember from like this TV show Lucifer I used to watch back
I
when I
know
was
the show.
younger.
I've never watched it, but I know the show.
Yeah, it's honestly one of my favorite shows growing up because I think that theme of honesty, it's something that's so attractive to me that anytime I see a character like Lucifer, it's crazy I'm comparing Lucifer to Beauty, but
But you see the common thing, right?
yeah, they both would never lie. And that
Mhm.
to me, you know, I lie every now and then, right? But I try my best to embody that because I guess that's something that is very fascinating to me and
Yeah.
very honorable. And another story, I don't know if you can call this a story, but it's a song.
Mhm.
But it's a song by the Beatles
Mhm.
called Lovely Rita.
Okay.
Where is this story of, I don't remember who sang it, maybe it was John Lennon, but he's like going about his day and he gets like a ticket, like a parking ticket on his car,
Mhm.
and he sees like the police officer who gives him the ticket is some lady, right?
Yeah.
And he falls in love with that girl who gives him a Target ticket. There's a whole story behind that, right?
Yeah.
Of him like going up to her and like asking her out and things like that. And I think that was like a fun story because it kind of goes back into the, you know, living life like in motion, doing your thing, and like going on these ventures, meeting people in the real world, and like,
Yeah.
you know, these little like, I guess most people kind of think of their life as like, you know, I go to class, I go to the gym, I go home, eat. It's like the same boring cycle, but for
Mhm.
me, I kind of think of it as like there's so much more meaning in like little things like parking tickets or going to the gym, because like just people you can meet through every process, like a
Mhm.
little story in every part of your life. So
Yeah.
I think like, again, they all come back to adventure, I guess, is a theme, but I think these stories always inspire me to kind of live with more motion and action. And
Yeah. You brought up another interesting point, which is like themes of in stories that it's like kind of like this recurring thing that really speaks to you or resonate with you, right? For me personally, the theme that I realize I'm really drawn to is this idea of like waking up from an illusion to face reality. Like The Matrix,
Yeah.
like The Truman Show. Have you watched it before?
No.
Okay. Like WandaVision. Have you seen WandaVision?
No.
It's fine, like because you don't watch movies usually, right?
Yeah.
But you know the
I know about the Matrix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this idea of like being, like living a world of illusions? Either you're creating illusions to kind of confine yourself, or the society, or something antagonistic is kind of imposing this illusion on you to prevent you from breaking free. And this theme of realizing that you're living in an illusion and waking up from it, and then finding your own agency after that realization, it always speaks to me. Like whenever I encounter movies like this, it just makes me feel really inspired, and I just want to go back and rewatch it, savor the experience, and like find the details in the stories and talk about it with other people. So yeah, it's interesting to see how like different themes appeal to different people. I'm sure, like for example, people who work out, they might find like stories of athletes very inspiring, right? Like I don't know if this sounds very old, but do you know like David Lade?
David Lade?
David
Yeah,
Lade
I know
and
about
like
it.
Jeff Side, for example.
Are those like the science-based lifters?
I'm
David
not sure.
Lade sounds
I don't know
familiar.
much about them, but
Okay.
those are just names that I remember from, like they peaked at like kind of when I'm in my 20s, right? Obviously they're still very influential. I'm just saying like I presume like some people would find this theme of like bodybuilding or like gaining more strength, pushing yourself to have more physical and psychological resilience in training. They might find this kind of theme very resonating, versus you mentioned about having adventure, right? And for me, it would be like waking up from illusion.
It's so,
Yeah.
you know, I think from the outside it seems like such a niche theme you're interested in,
Mhm.
but like knowing you now a little better, like I think it makes perfect sense, like why you find that so fascinating.
Okay.
Because
Also,
I think
yeah.
illusions are very similar to stories,
Uh-huh.
because an illusion is kind of like a story you really, really believed in, and then you realize the story was not real.
Yeah.
Because I kind of think about our day-to-day life in that way, because like everything in our world is kind of an illusion.
Mhm.
Like the United States of America,
Mm.
we all agree it's real, but the border doesn't really exist. Like a deer crosses the border, objectively nothing's changed,
Mhm.
except we all believe in the story that America exists, We all believe in the government. We all just say, yeah, that's how it works. So we're gonna listen to what that person says, and these people are gonna agree in their organization to do the work they're saying. Even companies are just, they don't objectively exist. They're not real things.
Yeah.
But everyone in the company just accept, yep, this is real. We're all gonna pretend it exists. We're gonna
Yeah.
listen to that person. We're gonna do our thing, and we get our money, which money doesn't really exist either.
Yeah.
It's this green piece of paper that, luckily, the person at the store believes in the same story. So when I give him this, he gives me the apple.
Yeah.
You know, and religion itself is, you know, it's debatable, but it's kind of a story in its own way. And
I agree. I actually
so-
think about like, one of my dreams is to write a novel on illusions. Like people realizing like illusions are in every aspect of their life. They're socially constructed. Your identity or like the value of things, like at least a portion of it is being like created by our mind, right? I actually watched this video yesterday. I didn't finish it, but I watched the beginning of it. It's about how like diamonds are not really that valuable.
Yeah.
It's like a marketing thing, right? So I feel like marketing is a one way that people create this kind of illusion and kind of add value to products, for example, to services, to somebody's image, like brand image, for example. So I definitely agree that a lot of things are just like, they're just like, I don't want to say made up, but they're like
Imagine
created,
realities.
socially constructed,
Yeah.
and then imposed on you, right, by
Yeah.
the society, or by people in authority, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, I think things like this University of Michigan is also such a cool story that, like, you know, someone sees, like, the M on your shirt
Mm-hmm.
and immediately feel connected to you, you know, wherever you go in the world, any
Yeah.
country, any state. That's also just kind of a story, right? That
Mhm.
we're all part of this, like, thing. I guess we all went to the same school together, but,
Yeah.
you know, I think that some level of illusion is needed for society to work. Like, I think the concept of society works on the basis of illusions.
Mm-hmm.
That we're all gonna agree on these like things,
Mhm.
and they're real. You're gonna pretend you're real. You're gonna really believe they're real. And
Yeah.
I know I was telling you about the book *Sapiens* in the gym.
Mhm.
I think what the author of *Sapiens* calls it is an imagined reality. Like, you can't really say it's fake, but it's not objectively real either. So it's
Mhm.
kind of an imagined reality that only exists in our brains. Like, the second if all humans disappeared, Michigan disappears too, because like Michigan is a concept we agree upon.
Yeah.
It only lives up here.
Yeah.
You know, like, sure, we give money, we attend, the buildings exist and things like the buildings would stay, but the concept of like, yeah, this is Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and like this is our school, and like we do these things together.
Yeah.
All these things would float away the second humans disappear, which I
Yeah.
find that very fascinating. that
Like if an
illusions-
alien, if the humans has gone extinct and an alien visit Umish, like they'll only see this as kind of like a symbol with like yellow and like blue color, right? They wouldn't know the meaning behind it, but this thing exists like because there's this shared reality, this agreed upon meaning that we create, and that makes us who we are, right? And I also like to think of stories in terms of, because you mentioned about like whether something is like made up or fake, right? I feel like stories are like metaphors. It's a better way to put it, like metaphors of like real life. So stories are real and made up at the same time, right? It's
Yeah.
like a simulations of how things real work, and the key is like whether you recognize it, the parts that's like reflects real life, how like you finding the parallels between the story and real life, or just treating it as something entirely made up and as a short-term entertainment thing that makes you feel better.
Yeah, man. I think that I'm curious. What's your best story? If you had to tell me a story from your life, what's your best story?
I love that question. So, if I were to tell, I guess, okay. So when I first went to college, I actually went to another college before. I was in the UK, and at that time I wasn't very motivated to study. I didn't have a sense of passion, and I didn't have the discipline to study. So I was dismissed after 3 years because
You were dismissed?
I was expelled
Oh,
from the school
wow.
because
In the UK?
I was failing all of my
Which school was
courses.
this?
University of Exeter.
Okay.
Yeah. I was doing biological science at that time, and So I repeated my year 1 and barely passed. Like I passed, but it's like on the borderline. And at year 2, I didn't pass again, so they had to let me go. But like everyone was very supportive, but there's nothing that they can do because I wasn't supporting myself, right? So I went back to Taiwan, worked for 2 or 3 years, and that's when I start to have a sense of discipline, because when you're working, you kind of have to set up all those routines and like disciplines, right? And that's also when I realized I was interested in psychology. So I worked at a consulting firm where they design kind of like classes or team building exercises that train like managers from other companies or like children. They have classes for that to kind of elevate their interpersonal skills, cognitive ability, attention ability, communication skills, and so on. And that's when I realized that psychology is the thing for me, because there's a lot of intuition I have about psychology. I'm curious about it. I want to read more about it, but I lacked the academic foundation for it, right? And that's when I realized that I want to go back to college and get a degree in psychology. And that's when I came to the US. And I've been here since like 2018, and it's a redemption story. So I've hit rock bottom, but I found myself and kind of redeemed myself, right? And one funny short story I always tell people is that when I came to the US, I changed my name.
No way. Oh, because I guess you had an Asian name probably before, right?
Not because of that. Like,
okay.
I always like my name was always like Jackie when I was in the UK, which I spent like 7 years at as well. But when I came to US, I feel like I want to pick my own name, because I feel like that's a symbol of agency and like a fresh start for me. So I picked the name Alfred because I feel like it's unique enough, it sounds nice, and one of my favorite psychologists, Alfred Adler, his first name is also Alfred. So I'm just like, okay, this is going to be very symbolic of like a rebirth and redemption. So yeah. So whenever somebody asks about like my story, this is always like a section of my life that I share because I feel like it's the most meaningful. Yeah,
that's a really cool story.
How about you?
My best story?
I mean, only if you are comfortable sharing.
Yeah, let me think.
Or if you have questions about like just
I do. We could do both. I'll tell you mine first, then we could go back into yours. Or let's actually talk about yours first before I forget all the questions. I think that changing your name is really cool, and it's very symbolic, as you said, like a new beginning. I guess something you talked about was like when people ask me to tell them a story, I always tell this story. And I think something I've realized from doing this podcast is that when I tell a story over and over again, my relationship with the story like kind of changes. Like, it's hard to describe it, but sometimes it doesn't feel as real, or it starts to become like an external thing. I think that's the best way to describe it, where like sometimes I even question, like after I've said a story like 10 times on the podcast, I sometimes wonder if like, did that even happen? Yeah. Or just like this thing, it feels so external. So do you feel the same way ever about like your own story?
I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like that's a process that's really relevant to what my advisors do research on. It's called self-distancing. So my advisor, his name is Ethan Cross, and he has like a lot of research on like how to regulate emotions, right? When you feel bad, how do you make yourself feel better? How do you reshape how you think about something? And one of his focus is on this process called self-distancing. So it's when it's almost as if you are like observing yourself as a third person, right? So in your case, it's kind of like when you're telling your story, you're kind of like distancing yourself from the event and you're observing what happened or recalling a different way. That's not like immersive or reliving the same thing. That's two different things, right? And what you said about like externalizing the event reminds me of that process called self-distancing. Yeah.
It's very interesting. There's a whole realm of psychology to this weird thing I've never been able to explain.
Yeah, I feel like one of the fascinating things about psychology is that it really answers my questions about a lot of things that I have going on in my mind, right? I've always been curious about why people do things in a certain way. Why do they behave, say things in a certain way, or why do they think in a certain way?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like after going into psychology, all my curiosity, they're like partially becoming answered step by step.
That's probably very satisfying.
Yeah, so that's what motivated me to just like keep going.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have more answers for me then, because there's all these like little things that I think about that it's hard for me to explain. And I think one that I was thinking about earlier today was this feeling I get every time it starts to get warmer again after the cold. Because today was beautiful outside. I think in Fahrenheit it was like 50s. I think. What do you say, 9 degrees Celsius?
Yeah, something like that.
You know, when the winter starts to end and the warm starts to come, I get this weird emotion where I'm like happy and sad at the same time. And I've kind of thought about it more as to why it happens, but you know, the winter for me is a very peaceful time because I'm very focused. I get a lot of work done. I'm very locked in. Things are not really changing much in like the external world, but I guess internal world changes a lot. But I feel like when it starts to get warmer, the warmth it feels like a sense of hope and excitement that I think to like the summertime of like going on road trips, driving with the windows down, blasting music, hanging out with friends, playing spike ball, going to the beach, traveling. You know, these are all things I feel like the warmth signals for me as excitement. But I think the negative emotion is kind of like this mix of nostalgia and fear. I guess fear that it'll kind of go away very quickly. Time will move very fast. I won't be able to grasp or hold on to it. And I kind of want to immerse myself and live in that excitement like all the time. That's like the feeling as soon as it starts to get warm, it kind of fills me. It's hard to describe because I'm like excited but also kind of melancholy at the same time.
Do you feel the same way when the weather turns from warm to cold too, or is it only like it happens when from cold to warm?
I would say it's different. I think when it goes from warm to cold, I don't think it's as strong of like a like this weird like what's the right word for it? Where there's like two kind of feelings going on at the same time. I feel like it's not the same in the winter. There's definitely a transition to the winter, but I guess when it starts to get cold, I get excited as well. Like there's sometimes it's like shit, can't play spike ball anymore. But at least for the most part, winter is usually exciting for me. The energy of the winter, so I think it's really apparent definitely at this time of year. So
I feel like whenever the weather like the season transition, I tend to feel more the excitement part. So it's very interesting how you mentioned you feel like at the same time there's this sense of hope, excitement, something to look forward to, but at the same time there's this like sadness that something like maybe it's a sense that time is moving, right? We're moving on to another part of the year. I feel like it's similar to when we celebrate New Year's Eve. I always feel it's a really weird mixed emotions that, okay, it's another, here we go again. Like we're doing like another New Year's Eve celebration.
Is your birthday close to is your birthday in January? Or?
No, it's in July.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same.
So
I'm July 25th.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm July 2nd.
Okay, sick.
But I guess that's different star sign, right?
I'm Leo.
Okay, I'm Cancer. So.
Okay, sick.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like especially when you're more mature, you start realize that a lot of things there's like conflicting, not necessarily conflicting, but mixed emotions about things, because there are different facets or different sides of every experience, right? It's kind of like when I had to move away from LA, I was there for like several years, right? It feels exciting and hopeful to start
From
a
LA?
new, yeah.
What were we doing in LA?
I was doing my undergrads.
Okay, sick.
Somewhere near LA,
Cool.
in Riverside. So, but I have to move away. I was like, it's very exciting to start a new part of my journey, but at the same time, I'm leaving a part of me, or like a lot of my friends are there, right? So I'm leaving something behind. So I like the idea of mixed emotions. I think it happens. It means like you're very observant and I guess you're able to feel the different part, and you're aware, you're acknowledging that there are different things happening.
And maybe finding a way to articulate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, sorry.
No, I was just like, but currently I can't really think of any explanation.
That's okay. Sometimes just having questions is better.
Yeah.
And one day it'll be answered. But
yeah.
Maybe that is just what's happening. It's like this dichotomy between these two feelings. But the more I think about it, I think it feels more like FOMO in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
That like the summer's gonna run away from me and I'm gonna miss it.
Mm.
It's a weird feeling. But
yeah.
I guess we'll see. It usually goes away and then summer comes and it's fun. But
yeah. I feel like I start to lose my sense of time after becoming a grad student, because you're just so invested in, like, there's no time for me to worry about other things, you know. So it's like winter's here, fine, but it sucks to experience like the coldest part of winter, but oftentimes I'm just like, my mind is just somewhere else. Like I don't really care about. Yeah,
man. But I'm excited. Today got me excited. There's all these dreams of the things I want to do this year are kind of unfolding. So
yeah,
I think it's gonna be a good year. And
write more stories.
More stories.
Create more stories of your.
More stories for
project.
the wall.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I want to mention that might be cool to you is that, you know, I think we all have these stories in our head, but I think one of the reasons you like movies so much is because you're kind of taking the story and saving it, or kind of putting it somewhere for others to share.
Yeah.
And one thing I love about the podcast is that it helps me to like bookmark my stories, or I can share a story, but it's not like, I mean, back in the day you would say it like around the fireside and in your tribe, and then you pass it down generation to generation. But I think one thing that technology unlocks is that stories can be saved forever. You know, like this podcast feels like a time capsule of like 140 unique little stories. Yeah. And every week in my life, there's like, you can almost look in the archive and just pick a random date, and it's like, what stories were going on at that time. And that's one of the reasons I actually keep doing this and love it, because it's like.
So maybe technology and social media aren't bad after all.
Yeah. I wouldn't say technology is bad. I love technology.
Okay, but social media specifically.
And this is a form of social media, so I do agree.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny because I also I agree with the bookmark part. So I have this habit of actually on my Instagram story highlight, I have this entire album of like some of my favorite movies. I just like take a screenshot of one of my favorite scene or I feel like it's very beautiful. I just store it back there. So I just feel like it's meaningful and makes me feel very safe and peaceful to know that there are meaningful moments that are like I'm framing and then just saving there, you know. So sometimes when I'm like feeling a little depressed or when I'm bored, I just open the album and kind of revisit all those stories. Like it's a very condensed framing of like a scene, but it's representative of kind of like how you like represent all the meaningful interactions and the podcast that you have done. So I think we're doing this in like different ways.
And I think everyone tries to find some way to do it, because I think you kind of want to hold on to those good moments, right? And when you're feeling low, if there's somewhere you can go to, like a safe place where you could like just re-pull your favorite stories, I mean, it's hard to like not feel a little bit better. You know, like look at what I'm saying. I like to flip through the podcast and like watch all episodes. Yeah,
kind of like some people do comfort shows. Like there's just this one show they like to go back to, revisit time and time again, right?
Yeah, man.
I feel like one thing like I want to mention as well is I feel like how one develop their relationship with a story is kind of like developing a relationship with a friend or a real person, right? So there's this phase when the story is being introduced to you, right? And then there's this first encounter, like a first date with a person. You experience that story, and then you might find a connection with it or not, similar to how you would do with like a person or a date, right? And then you might go back and revisit it regularly, or you might revisit a few years later and you feel like, wow, it feels differently, or you feel like it's the same all over again, but it's very comforting to feel that way.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, this is a great podcast.
Thanks.
I think
got through a lot of cool topics. I think the work you're doing, I find it very fascinating. I'm glad you found something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's hard to force yourself down a path that, you know, you have no interest in. Like, you know, it makes sense to me that you would, you know, you struggled in school if you just had no interest in what you were doing. And it might take time, but you found this very niche, fascinating area we're delving into. And I'm really impressed with your journey, your story.
And thanks for having me. I feel like this is such a meaningful work. And it's very hard to find someone who can connect with me like that. So definitely appreciate the conversation as well.
Definitely. And we should run this back because you're going to be here for a while, right? A couple of years?
Yeah, I'm stuck here for the next three or 4 years.
We'll definitely do another podcast because I'm here for another 2 years as well. So
yeah.
Definitely before we leave.
Yeah, we should do it maybe like in a few months if we have like something else interesting to talk about.
Yeah, hit me up when like something big happens and we'll come back and we'll run a podcast.
For sure.
But yeah, good luck with everything and I hope the study goes well. And,
Thanks.
Yeah, man, we'll stay in touch.
Thanks.
See you, man.
Yeah.